Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 201, The Strict Plans of Konoha 01. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41. The sound of birds could be heard outside Minato's apartment as he woke up drowsily in his bed, shared with his fiancées, despite not having had any intimate relations. Makoto was sleeping peacefully in her corner, while Kushina, sprawled on the bed, was almost drooling on Minato's face. For Minato and Makoto, it was refreshing to finally sleep more than 5 or 6 hours, as they had been used to during the war. The sun was already illuminating the entire village by this time. He got up calmly, gently moving Kushina away from him to get out of bed. Minato, she murmured in her sleep, probably dreaming, as she pouted as if kissing someone. He disappeared without physically leaving the bed, using his teleportation technique to arrive in the kitchen. "You're already awake?" Makoto commented, rubbing her eyes, which caused Kushina to wake up as well. Minato shrugged as he started preparing something for them to eat. However, he noticed that there was nothing left in the kitchen shelves since he had removed all perishables to prevent spoilage. Fortunately, he had a few supplies left in his storage scroll, which he placed on the table to prepare breakfast. Minato's breakfast! Kushina exclaimed, jumping with joy at the thought of eating his food again. She rushed to the kitchen, laughing and running, while Makoto walked in much more calmly. "And you, Suna, you've been there for the last 2, Minato said, looking toward the window as the 2 women returned to the kitchen. Suna appeared, opening the window as she climbed inside. "So, you knew I was here the entire time," Suna commented. "Of course I did, but I was asleep, as you probably noticed," Minato said with a grin. "And what exactly were you doing here?" he asked. Her eyes widened, a slight blush appearing on her cheeks. She seemed a bit lost, feeling the gaze of Makoto and Kushina on her. Gathering her courage, though still embarrassed, she blurted out, "I came to check if you didn't do anything inappropriate." Makoto, Kushina, and Minato all fell silent upon hearing that, until Minato couldn't hold back any longer and broke the silence. "Ha ha ha ha!" He burst out laughing, clearly amused. "Stop laughing! I had to check!" Suna exclaimed, her embarrassment growing. Still, Minato's laughter seemed to lift her out of the gloom she had been feeling the day before. "Were you trying to spy on us, Uchiha?" Makoto asked with a sly smile, resting her hand on her chin as if enjoying the situation. "You, Uchiha?" Suna stammered, unsure if she could feel more flustered. "Well," Kushina spoke up, her face turning progressively redder. "Maybe I did steal a few kisses," she admitted softly. "You were dreaming." "I saw it all," Makoto commented in a neutral tone. "That's not true, Databane." Kushina jumped out of her chair, planting her feet on the table and pointing a finger at Makoto. "Could you all stop making a mess? This is my kitchen, and I want respect here," Minato said firmly as he lit the stove to prepare coffee and cook something. Everyone fell silent, and Kushina slowly sat back down. Suna joined them at the table. "So, what are your plans for today?" Suna asked. "We could go to the beach," Kushina suggested enthusiastically. "No way. I doubt we can do that right now," Minato replied. "I can't leave the village, even with teleportation. My father will soon start looking for me since I haven't returned to the clan," Makoto added. "Speaking of that, is the Uchiha clan's prodigy really going to fight me?" Minato asked as he stirred the omelette. "Who are you fighting?" Kushina asked, surprised. She hadn't heard of any such challenge, as Minato hadn't mentioned it in the letters he sent her. Minato challenged the clan's favorite heir to become the Uchiha chief, Suna explained. "Really? Why?" Kushina asked in shock. because he was supposed to be my fiancé. But I decided to be with Minato, the one I love, and I defied my father. Minato also said he would fight the entire clan to protect me, Makoto stated with a wink at Kushina. Seriously? Kushina exclaimed, turning to Minato for confirmation. Minato simply shrugged. But I doubt they'll let it go after what you did in the Raikage fight. Even my father hasn't said anything since then. It seems he's recognized your strength, Minato. But I doubt the clan will just accept this. I'll probably be expelled, and I'll have to remove the Uchiha name and symbol. After all, I doubt the clan elders will allow this marriage, Makoto said. And you're okay with that? Suna asked, a bit surprised, as was Kushina. I chose this, fully aware of the consequences. Besides, do I really need to use the Uchiha name anymore? She asked calmly, resting her elbows on the table as she spoke with a serene tone. Suna and Kushina remained silent while Minato approached with the food, placing it on the table for them. You can eat now. Save the conversation for later, he said as the three girls couldn't resist and started eating Minato's much-desired food quickly. Makoto, however, was more accustomed to his cooking and ate at a steadier pace, remaining calm, unlike Suna, who was more reactive, or Kushina, who was hyperactive. Kushina closed her eyes as she savored the food. Minato put away the kitchen utensils and joined them at the table, calmly grabbing his omelet with bacon and eating quietly. They stayed there for a while, until a knock was heard at the door. Who is it? Suna asked as she ate. An ANBU, Minato commented, sensing the person's attire on the other side of the door through his haki. I'll see what they want, Minato said as he stood up and went to the entrance, where he found the masked man waiting. Minato Namikaze, the Hokage requests your presence tonight. Please report to his office as soon as you can, the ANBU said before vanishing. Already? Minato muttered, scratching his head as he closed the door. I thought the ninjas would be summoned in 3 days, Suna commented. I believe the Hokage is calling all camp leaders for a meeting. I'll have to deliver my report to him personally, Minato explained. In any case, there will be more shinobi arrivals in the village. Should we go see them? Kushina asked. We can, but I'd also like to see the village again, Minato said, and everyone nodded in agreement, finishing their meals before beginning their day's activities. Meanwhile, in the Hyuga clan, Hanabi rose from her futon, preparing for the day. She swapped her sleeping attire for a dress and, after washing up, headed straight to the kitchen, where her grandfather was waiting for her. You're finally awake, my granddaughter, he greeted calmly, his face marked with age and his eyes bearing the distinctive Hyuga white. Grandfather. I'm sorry I got back so late yesterday. I didn't even get to speak to you, she said softly. It's fine. I know you were with your team. But the clan won't be happy about that, he commented as he poured tea for Hanabi. I know, she murmured, sipping her tea calmly. I'm glad you're well. How was the war? I've heard some things. About you and that boy from your team, the old man said. Yes, we saw many comrades fall, but we grew stronger and did our part, Hanabi responded solemnly. Indeed, war is bloody. It must have been similar to the first great ninja war, where I fought. I lost so many comrades. My brothers and parents died fighting to protect the main family, he recounted, his voice heavy with memory. Hanabi remained silent, lowering her head as she listened. About that, she murmured hesitantly. You'll soon have to serve the main family, Hanabi. It's tradition, he said with a firmer tone. Hanabi instinctively shrank at those words. In the Hyuga clan, once a member reaches a certain age, they are required to serve the main family, leaving their teams to form squads that exclusively serve the heirs, leaders, and elders of the clan. But you're only 15, so you have a few more years before you need to worry about that, he added at the end, though his tone remained stern. He understood the obligations of the clan, but Hanabi's reactions and doubts concerned him. The main family could easily see her as someone needing stricter discipline, and activating the curse seal on her forehead was always a looming threat, a pain that was impossible to forget. I know, Grandpa. Hanabi muttered, sounding a bit downhearted. Besides, I recommend you stop using the bow style. The clan already knows about it, and there are rumors of a Hyuga fighting with a bow. No matter how talented you are, they won't allow anyone to deviate from the traditional Hyuga teachings that the clan has preserved for centuries, he said. But Grandpa. Hanabi clearly didn't like hearing that. After all, she was very skilled with her style, and abandoning it would weaken her potential. You can't, Hanabi. Stop insisting on this. Her grandfather suddenly erupted, his voice loud and stern, surprising Hanabi as she clenched her fists. Sorry about that. He broke the silence again, his tone calmer now as he looked at his granddaughter. It's just that the clan is rigid, and you could face serious punishment. They won't tolerate your bow any longer. They see it as offensive that a clan member would stray from the path the rest of the Hyuga follow, he explained, his concern for Hanabi evident despite his strict demeanor. I understand. Hanabi murmured, though in truth, she didn't fully understand. She felt confused and unsure of what to do. I'll fight the Hyuga clan if they don't accept it, I promise. Minato's voice echoed in her mind. She remembered that she hadn't even wanted to use a bow at first, he was the one who introduced it to her. She wondered if he was serious about that promise, if he would really challenge the Hyuga clan the way he did with the Uchiha for Makoto. No, I can't let him make another enemy. Besides, I'm not his fiancé like Makoto. The sad thought echoed through her mind. I don't know what you're thinking, Hanabi, but just know that I want you to be safe. You may be summoned to meet with the elders soon, her grandfather said in a serious tone, feeling helpless in the face of the clan's authority. He knew how much pressure the clan could place on the only family he had left. Why? Is it about my bow style? Hanabi asked. Unfortunately, yes. It's hard to say this, but you stood out too much during the war. The rumors have spread, and even the clan is talking about it. You not only use a bow, but many have witnessed your capabilities. Your team's reputation has grown, and Minato Namikaze's name is being heavily discussed in the village. That includes your team, and it's overshadowing the heir of the main family. The elders aren't happy about it. A member of the branch family gaining more recognition than those of the main house, that's something they won't tolerate, he murmured. But that's not fair. Hanabi murmured, unable to believe what she was hearing. She had done her part in the war, fought alongside Minato, and developed a powerful style. Now her clan wanted to take away her strength, her team, and her pride, throwing it all away just because she wasn't born into the main family? A hollow feeling began creeping into Hanabi's chest. It was a familiar emptiness she hadn't felt in a long time, not since her academy days, when Minato had shown her a new path. A time when she made friends, laughed for the first time, and had fun, forgetting the fate sealed for her by birth. I can imagine what you're thinking, Hanabi. I was once the same way, her grandfather murmured, seeing the dark aura that surrounded his granddaughter. But this is our destiny. We were born to serve the main family. You'll understand that in time, he said, watching Hanabi rise from her seat. I understand. I'm feeling a bit unwell. I'll go to my room, Hanabi said in a dry tone as she walked away. Forgive me, my granddaughter, but this is our destiny, her grandfather said softly to himself. In his mind, it was this or death. The clan would eliminate Hanabi if she resisted too much. He preferred she return to the clan's customs so long as she stayed alive. Chapter 202, The Strict Clans of Konoha 02. Third Person POV. Konoha, Year 41. The Hyuga clan was not the only clan dissatisfied with its members, while the Uchiha clan, also in the center of the village, was holding a meeting at that very moment. All the elders and main members were gathered inside one of the houses where they usually convened. The Uchiha clan was concentrated in a single camp, as it had been their demand, and the Hokage ended up agreeing to it. However, they were still sent on specific missions and even deployed to various borders, mainly the eastern border against the Land of Water due to the heightened tension in that area. But now, all of them had returned in recent days, making the Uchiha one of the first clans to be fully present in the village after the war. Mazu, alongside all the elders who had not participated in the war but were kept informed of all events in real time, sat in the large room. Everyone had their designated place, while the central seat was occupied by the current clan leader. Fugaku, you may leave, along with everyone else, Mazu spoke calmly to the young man standing before him. You too, the meeting is over, and we need to talk alone now, another elder said. You as well. But clan leader, Fugaku tried to argue. You're not ready yet, Fugaku. We'll talk a bit later, Mazu said, and despite his frustration, the young man nodded. It wasn't just Fugaku leaving, several other young members who assisted the elders and worked as their guards and aides due to the elders' advanced age also left the room, leaving only the elders and the clan leader behind. He seems a little impatient, one of the elders said directly to Mazu, who nodded. Yes, but he's still young. He'll learn how to lead with time, Mazu remarked as he watched the others walk away, then turned his attention to everyone present. He's our best candidate to take over as clan leader after me, he added. Very well, we'll deal with that later. Right now, we have other, much more important matters to handle, an elder stated, and the others nodded in agreement. Let's begin. I imagine the first topic will be about what happened at the northern border, the leader commented as some of the elders nodded. First, we need to talk about the 53 missing ninjas and the 144 who died. We lost many of our ninjas in this war. A significant part of the clan perished, and it will take us years to recover our ranks, one of the elders said. Yes, but we still remain the largest clan in Konoha, while the Senju are at rock bottom. It's somewhat ironic, another commented. But we didn't achieve any major feats in this war, someone else pointed out, causing tension to ripple through the group. That's true, Mazu. I expected better. We are disappointed with your performance during the war. We should even consider electing a new leader, an elderly man said in a severe tone. Mazu showed no sign of displeasure as he looked at the elder. I can't deny that the Uchiha didn't stand out in the war, he admitted. We shouldn't have forced the Hokage to authorize the entire Uchiha clan to remain in a single camp, one of them stated. But you yourself fought for that decision, you fool, another elder exclaimed angrily. I chose what was best for the clan, he retorted. Look at what you and some of the other elders here have done. Enough. Mazu raised his voice before those old men started quarreling right there. Everyone seemed to calm down as Mazu sighed, knowing how stubborn those elders were. It was indeed a mistake not to diversify our members across various battlefields, Mazu commented. And we must not make that mistake again. We need to let our members be assigned to different battlefields where they can perform better, he said. No name from our clan is known across the world from this war. Our clan is declining, soon we'll be in the same state as the Senju, another elder responded. As the Senju? I think you're a bit outdated. The granddaughter of the first Hokage became quite famous during this war. Even before becoming one of the legendary Sannin, she stood out by combating Suna's poisons and implementing her plan to have a medical ninja in every squad on that front, which proved to be a success and even turned the tide of a war against two countries in Ames lands. One of the elders recalled those events. It seems we're a failure, with no great shinobi born in this generation, someone lamented. The White Fang, the legendary Sannin, even the Yellow Flash, not to mention Elder Danzu's performance with the Hokage in the eastern region and how the Uzumaki clan helped turn that battlefield around, even without the Hokage present. So many names. The Uchiha clan was too proud, always standing out in wars, which is why they had been one of the most powerful clans in ancient times and still remained the most powerful group in the village. However, despite not performing poorly in the war and providing necessary support when needed, they had done nothing extraordinary like the names mentioned above. This was a direct blow to their pride. I believe Fugaku will become a new name for the clan in the coming years, Mazu said. We hope so, clan leader. In any case, we'll work on creating a name for the clan over time. But we have another problem, we've lost many, but that's not the most concerning issue, it's the missing ninjas. One of the elders brought the subject back. About that, we've tried to investigate several times. It wasn't just the Uchiha, but it's highly suspicious, Mazu murmured and began speaking about their efforts to find answers. In the end, nothing had been discovered about the disappearance of the Uchiha and other ninjas. It was as if they had vanished from existence.
What do you think this is? Was it the Cloud Village? One of the elders asked Mazu.
I can't say for sure. Although it only happened on the northern border, there haven't been any mysterious disappearances of ninjas from other battlefields.
Not in that number. Mazu paused before continuing.
Clearly, everything points to the Cloud Village trying to get their hands on our ninjas and others.
This can be evidenced by the classified mission involving Kushina Uzumaki's rescue, the current Ninetales Jinchuriki.
It was a secret mission that only a few people know about, including the northern border camp leaders. But it proves that the Cloud Village is behind this, he stated.
This is outrageous.
We can't allow them to get their hands on the Sharingan of our members. We must do something, one of the elders spoke in a harsh, worried tone.
Yes, we'll need to handle this personally.
I will speak with the Hokage since the village is trying to establish peace agreements with many other villages soon, alongside the feudal lords, Mazu said with a serious expression.
This could be a huge problem. Sharingan in the hands of others? Who are the ones missing? Another elder asked.
Many Jounin, but most of them are Chunin.
And among those Chunin were 2 boys from the elite class, Mazu responded. So we no longer have any surviving members from that Hokage program?
That's truly disgraceful, one of the eldest commented, visibly disappointed.
There's another issue, another elder murmured as the atmosphere in the room grew darker. At that moment, even Mazu's expression became serious upon hearing those words. Losing the Sharingan to another village in one instance.
And in another, are we going to lose our bloodline to someone outside the clan? One of the elders asked with a severe tone.
How did you let your daughter get to this point, Mazu? You've truly brought shame upon us, another elder spoke, showing no restraint. Mazu didn't respond immediately.
Even as the clan leader, he knew he had to listen to the elders. And, in a way, they were right, he would have done the same if he were in their position.
Are we bowing before just one boy now? One of the elders sneered. And we're accepting this? What nonsense!
We should kill him, suggested one of the more radical elders.
Kill the man who managed to defeat the Raikage?
Good luck with that, another elder mocked the idea, shaking his head in disbelief.
So, what then? We bow? Are we going to let a boy from outside the clan simply take one of our members and start a family? Are we going to let our genetics slip from our grasp? The power of the Sharingan no longer bearing the Uchiha name? Is that what you want? We are still the Uchiha clan. Since when did we become cowards? Another elder retorted, his voice filled with indignation.
The elders continued to debate among themselves until one of them turned again to Mazu.
Mazu, how did you let things get to this point?
We cannot allow this to happen, one of the elders said firmly. We could respond with an attack, another suggested.
Great. Now we're at the mercy of a boy. How did it come to this?
Didn't the boy challenge Fugaku, your favorite? One elder remarked with disdain.
It wasn't through Makoto's hand, but rather through her pride, Mazu sighed. I don't think we're going to get my daughter back. He hadn't revealed anything about his daughter's Mangekyo Sharingan. After all, that would make everyone even more furious.
So, he withheld that information, subtly protecting his daughter. Though reports of the yellow skeletal giant had already reached the elders' ears, they believed it was Mizu who had awakened the Mangekyo. Most of them had lived during Madara's time, so they recognized a Susanoo. Even so, the atmosphere of indignation continued to grow among the elders, and one of them slammed his hand forcefully on the floor.
How? How did you let this happen, Mazu? One of the elders shouted in anger. We shouldn't agree to this. Let's go talk to the Hokage.
Since when did we become cowards who run to the Hokage? Another elder roared.
The boy challenged the entire clan, and we're going to run?
I don't care what kind of prodigy he is.
No one can defeat the Uchiha clan. We'll deal with the boy later. First, we need to talk about Mazu's daughter.
After all, what she did is unforgivable, one of the elders reminded them, and slowly the others began to calm down. Makoto Uchiha turned her back on the clan to follow an indecent love, another elder said with disdain. And I blame Mazu for this, both as her father and as the clan leader.
But that's not the issue right now.
Another elder stroked his beard, deep in thought, before continuing. Still, she turned her back on us.
Therefore, I vote for the expulsion of Makoto Uchiha.
If we manage to separate her from that boy, she must pay with her life.
I accept the vote, another elder spoke up. Makoto Uchiha has dishonored the Uchiha name and must pay with her life.
Let's deal with her accordingly, another suggested, as more and more elders raised their hands and voiced their opinions.
All their positions led to the same conclusion, Makoto's elimination, once she was separated from Minato. Mazu remained silent for a long time.
With his eyes closed, no one knew what he was thinking. Finally, he opened them and nodded, confirming the will of all the elders present. His daughter must be eradicated for the good of the clan.
Chapter 203, The Strict Elders of Konoha. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41. Help! Help!
A voice cried out from outside as Minato finished putting on his Jonin vest. He wondered what all the commotion was about as he approached the door. When he opened it, he saw Kushina staring oddly ahead, Suna standing with her hands on her hips and a serious scowl, while Makoto held an old lady by the collar, who was pleading with her not to hit her. Minato was stunned by the scene, especially since the old lady was his neighbor, someone who always gave him strange looks. Now, she was being restrained by Makoto, begging to be released.
Help me!
Help me! She screamed in despair as Makoto kept her restrained. The old lady then noticed Minato and called out to him. Boy, dear Minato, help me, she exclaimed as Minato stood there, unsure of what to say. She seemed to forget all about Makoto, giving Minato a toothless smile.
You look handsome, by the way.
Soon you'll be a beautiful man, the old lady said, prompting Makoto to tighten her grip, appearing infuriated by those words.
What is this, Minato?
Suna immediately asked, pointing at him with a frown, clearly puzzled by the situation and the identity of this old woman who seemed overly familiar with Minato. Minato was at a loss for words, something that rarely happened to him. The old lady had always been a strange and obsessive figure, even when he was at the ninja academy.
For Minato, she was the main reason he wanted to move away.
He ignored her cries for help as Makoto seemed to be losing her patience.
How did this happen? Was the only thing he managed to ask?
That old lady was trying to spy on you while we were outside waiting.
When we saw someone opening your door, we found her acting very suspiciously. Suna explained, glancing at Minato, her eyes demanding an explanation. Just remind me never to come back to this apartment. Minato muttered, still paralyzed by the situation.
In the end, they left the old woman on the ground, dazed, and walked out of the building as the girls continued questioning him.
Look, it's not my fault. That woman has always spied on me. This is why moving out was a good idea.
Minato justified himself, while the girls exchanged suspicious glances. Eventually, they decided to head to a corner of the village, moving towards a training area like they used to do in the old days.
We should have invited Hanabi, Kushina commented. I thought so too. Right, Minato? Suna asked, looking at him. Something wrong?
She asked, surprised to see him staring pensively into the distance. We're being watched, Minato replied without looking at her, keeping his eyes fixed in one direction. He then turned and stared toward a specific spot, where three ninjas quickly vanished into the trees, rustling the leaves as they disappeared.
Who were they? Makoto asked with a suspicious look. The girls hadn't sensed their presence, even though Kushina and Suna were powerful sensory ninjas.
Both looked confused.
Minato was the only one who had noticed, using his haki.
They were skilled ninjas to escape Kushina and Suna's detection, Minato thought, leaving the thought unfinished. He knew he was being observed, likely because of the influence he now wielded in the village.
Powerful figures who were no longer fond of him might already see him as a threat.
Setting it aside, they proceeded to a spot near the riverbank.
Minato wasn't in the mood to train and sat down with his fiancées, while Kushina pulled out some storage scrolls and offered them cakes she had made.
Minato, however, remained watchful, noticing ninjas standing around, observing them.
This time, the ninjas appeared to be protecting Kushina, or so it seemed.
Yet, Minato sensed infiltrators among them, picking up traces of their intentions. He couldn't tell if the Hokage was aware of their presence or if they had slipped by unnoticed.
I won't be as free as I was before the war, which isn't surprising in the end.
At least I trained enough, have a vast arsenal, and my chakra reserves are prepared for anything, Minato thought again, resting his hands behind his head as he leaned against the riverbank. Feeling the sun and letting go of his worries, he wanted to savor the moment of being back in the village. Kushina and Suna ate silently, while Makoto also sat quietly, taking in the calm atmosphere of the place. They stayed like that until late afternoon, when they began walking through the village. They saw more groups returning from the war, receiving grand welcomes similar to what they had experienced the day before. It was the same scene they had witnessed upon their own return. A crowd gathered to greet them, cheering their names as they walked down the main street towards the Hokage's building. The Hokage always gave motivational speeches to the returning troops, boosting the morale of the village's shinobi after the war. Later, they stopped to grab something to eat before nightfall. They didn't take too long, as Minato needed to meet with the Hokage, who was available at that moment. He bid farewell to the girls, as Kushina and Suna returned to the Senju clan compound, while Makoto headed to Minato's apartment.
We'll see each other tomorrow.
Let's also take a look at the land I bought so we can start planning the construction of the place, Minato said, to which Kushina nodded cheerfully.
In the next instant, he disappeared, using teleportation to appear in front of the Hokage's building. As he entered, an ANBU appeared.
Minato Namikaze, the Hokage is waiting for you in his office, the ANBU informed before vanishing. Minato walked down the corridor toward the office, opening the door to find the Hokage standing with his back to him, gazing out the window. The village lights sparkled, and sounds of laughter and celebration echoed in the distance. The room was guarded by several hidden ANBU, ever vigilant. You're here. The Hokage turned to face Minato, who was slowly approaching.
Yes.
You summoned me, Minato replied, maintaining his posture.
Indeed.
Your performance exceeded even our high expectations, though we already anticipated great things from you.
The #1 rookie of the elite class.
A program that, as we can see, has been very successful, the Hokage said, moving toward his desk and taking a seat.
Minato merely nodded, feeling no need to say anything further. I've called you because we'll be holding a ceremony in 2 days.
You'll be recognized as a war hero for the entire village, the Hokage continued.
Minato nodded at the words.
He noticed the Hokage seemed genuinely enthusiastic about this, though Minato also knew his name was spreading quickly throughout the village, especially among those who didn't know him personally. He couldn't tell if the Hokage was yielding to public pressure or acting out of personal conviction. The old man was unpredictable, after all.
Minato was also keenly aware of the scrutiny he was under, likely from the Hokage's ANBU and the elders. Minato trusted none of them, knowing that he now had to navigate the political game because of his growing influence.
I'll be there, Minato responded firmly.
Good. It will be an honor for the village and our shinobi.
I'm sure Jiraiya would be proud of you if he were here, the Hokage remarked. I wish he were here too, Minato said with a more personal tone. Jiraiya was still in the land of rain training Nagato, Konan, and Yahiko. Based on Minato's calculations, Jiraiya would likely remain there for another year or two before returning.
Yes, but moving on, I'd like to discuss your role now while Jiraiya is away. Jiraiya mentioned that you did an excellent job in the ANBU.
The reports highlighted your abilities, helping us understand your competence even before you became known as the hero who sacrificed himself for the village in Suna, especially during the alchemist rescue and other missions like saving the southern camp from disaster. As we've observed, there's been a noticeable decline in the Ghost Squad's performance since your departure. The Hokage paused, looking at Minato as he lit his pipe. After exhaling a puff of smoke, he continued.
I would like to invite you to return to the ANBU under my command.
There's no need for an immediate decision.
I want you to think about it, the Hokage suggested. What is my other option? Minato asked cautiously, avoiding giving a direct response. You can return to your normal mission routine with your team. We'll add a temporary member while Jiraiya is absent.
However, personally, I believe it would be more beneficial for everyone if you joined the ANBU in the meantime, the Hokage explained.
And my team? Will Hanabi and Mikoto be with me? Minato asked, concerned. He didn't want to abandon his companions, even though he was intrigued by the ANBU proposal. Yes.
On the northern border, where you served as leader, except for the reconnaissance mission investigating the disappearance of ninjas, you didn't fail a single mission and were efficient at every moment. You've demonstrated the ability to protect your team and lead effectively. I believe you're ready for this and capable of compensating for your teammates' lack of experience, the Hokage replied, observing Minato closely. I'll consider it, sir, but I would like a few days to think it over, Minato said cautiously. Of course.
You can give me your answer after reflecting on it.
This is not something that needs to be decided right now, the Hokage agreed. He handed a scroll to Minato, and with a farewell gesture, left him to think. Minato took the scroll and disappeared, using his teleportation technique to leave like a ghost.
A sound came from one side of the office.
The Hokage turned his gaze and gestured with his hand, signaling all the ninja guards in the room to vanish, leaving the two of them alone. A man emerged from the shadows, holding a cane. His arm was bandaged, and one eye was covered, evidence of war wounds from the Eastern Front. You finally managed to position him where you wanted, Danzo commented, his tone heavy with intention.
That's good. We can keep a close eye on him.
After all, my men report that he seems to notice their presence.
It's a shame, though, that you didn't place him directly in the route, where he belongs. Danzo, he hasn't given his answer yet.
And I've already told you, I will have him work directly with me, the Hokage responded calmly, continuing to smoke his cigar. I hope you're right and that you act when necessary, Danzo retorted.
If that boy becomes a threat to us, he must be eliminated.
You've seen how influential he has become and how strong he is at such a young age. We can't allow someone so powerful to grow unchecked in the village, to the point where no one can stop him. Remember, he was also a student of the second Hokage, and he would never have allowed this, Danzo insisted darkly.
You have the same fear you've always had.
Minato fought for the village, but even so, for the sake of the leaf. The Hokage paused, deep in thought. I will keep an eye on him to ensure he never becomes a threat, he affirmed, ending the conversation.
It's not just him.
You know there are others whose reputations could threaten your position as Hokage, Danzo said seriously. The Hokage remained silent, thoughtful. Your students as well, Danzo added with a grim expression.
Tsunade, Orochimaru, Jiraiya.
They are not a threat to the village, Hiruzen cut him off. There was no reply as Danzo disappeared back into the shadows. Meanwhile, more than 500 meters in the air, a ninja hovered, watching everything.
He looked down intently, listening to the entire conversation between the Hokage and Danzo. These old men.
The ninja murmured to himself.
The war has just ended, and they're already scheming.
They want to eliminate the greatest names in the village, the same heroes they were forced to recognize, thanks to witnesses, rumors, and the general knowledge of the ninjas who fought. He shook his head in disapproval.
The way they act.
It's unbelievable, Minato thought, disappearing from the scene like a shadow vanishing into thin air.
Chapter 204, Mikoto's Little Game. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41.
2 days had passed while Minato visited the Hokage, spending his time with friends as he did at that moment. So, you became a Jonin, Minato said as they occupied an entire table at a barbecue restaurant, joined by a group of former classmates from the elite class where they had graduated. Minato, Makoto, Kushina, Suna, along with the group known as Inoshikacho Yamanaka Inoichi, Nara Shikaku, Akimichi Choza, and other members who had graduated with them and survived the war, had gathered to celebrate its end. More than 10 people were present.
Yes. So much responsibility, Shikaku muttered, not entirely pleased with the idea. Not just that, Minato. He became the vice leader of the camp. Choza said while enjoying his barbecue. Really?
Minato asked, surprised, as he hadn't seen any reports about it.
I haven't been officially appointed. It's just talk with Choza.
I've only been informally assisting the commander of Camp 10, Shikaku replied, shaking his head. You're the only one who managed to become an early commander among us, Inoichi remarked, looking at Minato, who was surrounded by girls. And popular too, as always, he thought with a hint of envy. Other girls were gazing at Minato with more alluring looks, but none of the 4 girls at the table would let anyone else approach him. You became a war hero, Minato.
I always knew you'd be someone important or something like that.
But fighting Hanzo, the Tsuchikage, infiltrating the sand village alone to get the antidote, fighting the Raikage and defeating him.
I don't think anyone contributed more to the war than you.
I don't even know why the village hasn't officially recognized all your feats yet.
Damn, you're our age, what kind of monster will you become in the future? Shikaku commented in a tone full of boredom as he pointed at Minato.
You think too much, Shikaku.
Eat more. Choza said, offering him some meat, though Shikaku declined with a shake of his head. Ha ha ha.
Everyone laughed at that, and Minato returned to his meal.
But you all became famous last year.
I heard rumors about how you stood out in the fights against the Sand Village, and your actions gained recognition too, Minato said with a smile.
Well, we might have stood out a bit, Makoto commented. The night continued as they ate and talked at the barbecue restaurant.
After some time, everyone began to leave, saying their goodbyes, and each returned home. Makoto, without a clan and unsurprisingly, went with Minato to his house, where she had been staying for the past few days. If that old lady tries to spy on me again, I swear I'll beat her up,
Makoto said as they entered the apartment complex.
She glanced at the door opposite Minato's, but there was no sign of the nosy neighbor. It seemed the old woman had been traumatized, at least for now.
Minato felt relieved.
Unlocking the door and stepping inside while turning on the lights, he felt Makoto's gaze on him, as if she were deep in thought about something.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Minato asked, turning to her abruptly, and Makoto immediately averted her gaze.
Oh, nothing, nothing.
Can't I look? She replied with a smile that Minato found suspicious. I hope you haven't been drinking, Makoto, he teased while taking off his vest and preparing for bed. You were with me the whole night, you fool, she laughed, heading to the bathroom. Despite always sleeping in the same bed, they each stayed on their side. However, Makoto occasionally teased him, especially when they were alone.
Minato lay down, closed his eyes, and was almost asleep when he felt Makoto climb into bed and pull the blanket over herself.
He sensed that something was off. Minato, she called from behind him. He turned calmly, suspecting her tone.
Makoto had a mischievous smile on her face. Did you know I bought something today in one of Konoha's shops? I wanted your opinion.
Do you think it suits me? She asked. Minato looked at her for a moment, trying to figure out what she was planning this time. Raising an eyebrow in intrigue, he noticed her hesitating, starting to grow embarrassed. She simply got out of bed, still covering her body with the blanket for some reason, and stood on his side of the bed. Suddenly, Makoto let the blanket drop, revealing a red lingerie that accentuated her curves. She was nearly naked, something she had never done before. Minato stood there, staring at her from head to toe, noticing every detail. Makoto had never been so daring, and he was momentarily stunned by something so unexpected.
What is it?
Don't you like it? She asked, seeing Minato standing there motionless while her face turned bright red. She spun from side to side and even did a full turn, hoping he would compliment her. You look beautiful, Minato murmured, still sitting on the bed, unable to take his eyes off her. Unable to hide the blush on her face, Makoto broke into a wide smile, clearly delighted. She stepped closer to him with light steps and asked again, tilting her face toward his.
Really? Do you really think so?
Yes, you look beautiful, he repeated, staring at Makoto but making no other move. She realized her attempt to seduce Minato was working. He was speechless. The great hero of Konoha seemed paralyzed, and Makoto took advantage of it. She moved closer, feeling his breath, and wasted no time in pressing her lips to his, initiating a kiss.
Minato didn't resist, giving in to the warmth of the moment.
The kiss grew intense, filled with passion. Their tongues met in an almost wild rhythm. Makoto, growing even bolder and feeling her body move on its own, lifted her leg, placing it on the bed as she straddled Minato. Her warmth was evident, and Minato knew he wouldn't be able to resist that night.
The two resumed kissing fervently.
Minato grabbed her by the waist and gently laid her on the other side of the bed, positioning himself over her. Their hips touched, and the tension between them grew even thicker. Soft sounds emerged as she crossed her legs over Minato, pulling him closer to her. He began trailing kisses down her neck as Makoto closed her eyes, letting out quiet moans of pleasure.
Minato continued, lowering his lips to her chest, almost brushing against her breasts. "Should we be doing this?"
"It feels so good," she asked, her voice laced with pleasure.
Minato couldn't answer as he looked back at her.
They both knew where this would lead if they continued, and hesitation filled the air. However, Makoto decided to take the initiative to stop. With a teasing yet shy smile, she cupped his face and pulled him in for one last kiss. When she pulled away, she looked at him with a soft, loving smile.
"Minato, we're not married yet."
"As much as I want to continue, it's better if we save this for the right moment," she said, though her eyes betrayed her words. Still, she was right. He didn't try to kiss her again as she let him go, and he collapsed onto his side of the bed alone. Makoto got up and went to the bathroom, smiling, leaving Minato dazed. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, while Makoto changed into something more appropriate for sleeping in their shared bed. When she returned to the room, Makoto lay beside him, watching him.
"What's wrong, Minato? Are you okay?"
she asked with a mischievous smile, knowing she had left him flustered without letting things progress further.
Minato didn't reply.
He turned away, trying to ignore her.
Makoto chuckled softly, amused by how she had provoked and left him in that state.
Although she hadn't let the situation escalate, she knew she could boast to the other women interested in Minato that she had managed to seduce him and that he desired her. Minato was truly uncomfortable, as his lower body wouldn't relax after Makoto's teasing, and he had to endure it. In the middle of the night, Minato got up to go to the bathroom. He needed relief, all while hearing Makoto's quiet giggles coming from the room. He wanted to curse her but chose to ignore it. Returning to bed, he tried to sleep as if nothing had happened. The next morning, they were awakened by someone knocking on the door. Minato got up to answer it and found Kushina standing there with a cake in her hands. "I brought this for breakfast," she said, smiling, unaware of the awkwardness the two were trying to hide. After eating, they went for a walk through the village. On their way, they ran into Tsuna, who was handling matters related to her family's properties. She seemed quite busy as the only senju appearing publicly, but she managed to find some time and joined the group.
"Hey, did something happen between you two?
You smell like something suspicious," she asked immediately, glancing at Makoto and Minato, who both fell silent at her question. Later that day, Minato had an important event, the ceremony the Hokage had mentioned days before. However, before that, the group decided to visit the property Minato had purchased 2 years ago. It was a large piece of land, with space for training and even a lake.
"When are you going to start building, Minato?" Kushina asked excitedly, looking around.
"Next week.
I'll be hiring the builders and engineers to construct the house."
"I believe the planning is already complete," Minato replied thoughtfully. It was a shame there wasn't a Mokuton user in the village, it would have been a great help. Minato stayed there with the girls, planning the property and discussing ideas they had talked about in recent days. It wasn't his first time visiting the site, but now everyone was making suggestions about what they wanted for the space.
Makoto, Kushina, and Tsuna were enthusiastic, each sharing their ideas.
Though Minato listened, he already had everything planned out and was unlikely to change much.
"Well, let's head out.
It won't be long before the event starts, Minato said eventually as everyone began to leave the property.
Hey, did you notice how Hanabi was acting strange last night? Suna remarked.
That's true. At the barbecue, she wasn't acting like herself.
Do you think something's wrong? Kushina asked, concerned.
We should check on her later, Minato responded seriously as they continued walking. After some time, they began to hear loud sounds coming from the center of the village. As they approached, they noticed a large crowd gathered. Civilians, the great clan families, and shinobi were all present, as it was the main event marking the ceasefire and honoring the key ninjas who stood out during the war.
Chapter 205 Heroes of Konoha. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41.
The entire population was gathered in the village center, where the Hokage's building stood and the wall displaying the faces of the three Kages in its history.
Not only ninjas were present, but also civilians, women, and children accompanied by their parents.
Everyone, from within the village and even people from the Land of Fire who had come from other places, was waiting for the official end of the war. A little girl was clapping her hands cheerfully, looking at the crowd before her as if it were a sea of people.
Daddy, when is it going to start? There are so many people here.
The little girl murmured while sitting on her father's shoulders. It shouldn't take long for Hokage-sama to appear, her father replied.
Will they also talk about the heroes, Daddy?
I heard there were people who fought and did amazing things, she exclaimed, excited. Her father smiled. Yes, dear. The Hokage will also talk about the heroes. One day, I want to be a heroine too, she exclaimed, laughing, and her father laughed along with her.
Elsewhere in the crowd, the group from Minato's orphanage was watching from a corner with the children. Do you think Minato will be honored too? Asked a 13-year-old boy, curious.
He had not succeeded in pursuing a military career and would have to wait until he turned 15 to try a different path, as was the case for everyone who did not pass the academy. The woman beside him, none other than the orphanage director, Madame Garit, looked at the boy and replied, of course. Everyone's been talking about Minato these past few days. He was amazing in the war. Meanwhile, people continued chatting and commenting on the event. The buzz filled the air, and the space was already completely packed. Even so, a few latecomers were still arriving.
At that moment, Minato's group arrived at the location.
The place was fully crowded, and all four of them took in the sight. It looks like we're the last to arrive, Suna murmured. Well, we can watch from the rooftops, Minato suggested, jumping onto the top of a nearby house. The girls followed him, and other ninjas were also spread out on higher points to watch the event.
Hello, Commander Minato, someone called out from afar.
It was a man who had been at Camp 12 when Minato had led them.
Hello?
Minato replied, greeting him with a wave before turning his attention back to the event. There's an ice cream stand over there, I'm hungry. Kushina remarked as she leapt from the rooftop to buy a popsicle. She returned shortly after with a two-stick popsicle, splitting it and offering it to Minato.
You only brought one and you're offering it to Minato?
Suna looked at her with crossed arms, while Makoto said nothing. Kushina just stuck her tongue out at her, and Minato scratched his head at the situation but accepted the offered portion. Suddenly, a thunderous sound began to echo. People started cheering as they saw a figure approach the edge of the building, stepping forward until they could be seen by all. It was the leader of the village, who appeared before everyone, receiving applause and exclamations from the crowd. During the war, Hiruzen had played a crucial role. He had reinforced the eastern side of the Land of Fire against the Mist Village, pressuring enemy forces with brilliant strategies. When the Snow Village, at the height of its power during this war, sent its own Mizukage leading their two Jinchuriki along with the 7 swordsmen of the Mist, the Hokage of Konoha had to act. He supported the battlefield alongside Danzo, who led Konoha's ninjas and the Uzumakis. Under his leadership, the Mist's special squad was repelled, ensuring a solid defense. Although this victory did not end the war entirely, it was crucial to guarantee Konoha's protection until the conflict's conclusion, and the Mist was unable to muster such strength again. His popularity was at its peak at this moment, and the entire village chanted his name with enthusiasm. The voices of thousands merged into one, drowning out every other sound. Then, the Hokage raised his hand, signaling for silence. The crowd gradually began to calm down until, finally, everything fell completely silent. As soon as he had everyone's attention, he placed his hands behind his back and looked at each of those present men, women, and children, as well as the ninjas perched on the rooftops around the area. Today, we are celebrating a ceasefire. His voice echoed throughout the place, carrying a grandfatherly tone. A great victory has been achieved, not just through the strength of our ninjas but through the spirit that unites us. The war pitted us against all the great elemental nations, and yet, Konoha stood tall. He paused, glancing around. But why did we stand tall? It wasn't just because of the strength of our weapons, nor the number of ninjas, nor our strategy. It was because of the flame that burns within each of us, the flame we call the will of fire. He took a few steps forward, gesturing with his hands. The will of fire is what makes us a village, a family. Passed down since the first Hokage, it drives us to fight, not out of hatred or revenge, but to protect those we love, our friends, our children, our neighbors. This flame has been passed from generation to generation, from Hashirama Senju to today, and it will continue to light our path into the future. The crowd's expressions ranged from emotional to inspired. Today, we are not just celebrating the end of a war but also the sacrifices of those who made it possible for us to be here. Every ninja who fell on the battlefield, every civilian who worked tirelessly to sustain the village during difficult times, every child who endured fear, you are all heroes. Every one of you contributed to this victory. And now, with humility and determination, we announce a new beginning. I officially declare, at this moment, a ceasefire between the nations. This is the first step toward rebuilding bonds of peace, ensuring that future generations can grow under the sky of hope rather than the shadow of war. The crowd began murmuring in approval, the warmth of Hiruzen's words touching every heart deeply. He raised his hand once again, his voice rising for the conclusion. May the flame of the will of fire continue to burn within each of us, guiding us to better days. Let us never forget what makes us strong. Our unity, our sacrifice, and above all, our love for Konoha. The speech immediately ignited a roar from the people, their cheers echoing throughout the village. At that moment, an ANBU appeared before Minato. Minato Namikaze. You are being summoned to join the Hokage. Will you accompany me? He asked amid the noise, and Minato nodded, glancing at the girls. I have to go, he said, and they all nodded in agreement. Go on, hero. Makoto smiled as Minato vanished, following the ANBU. They quickly reached the top of the building, where a group of people was already waiting behind the Hokage. Minato soon found himself under the gaze of three individuals, among them, the three elders. They seemed to be swallowing something bitter as they looked at Minato, especially Koharu Utatane and Hamura Midokado. Danzo, on the other hand, appeared calm, though Minato could sense the intense stare he directed at him. You're finally here, boy. Beside him, Tsukumo Hatake offered a small smile to Minato. You're here too, which isn't a surprise, Lord Tsukumo. Minato returned the smile. Minato then noticed another figure who wasn't one of the Hokage's ANBU, Orochimaru. Where is Tsunade? Minato couldn't help but ask. After all, she should have been present. Tsunade couldn't make it. She said she wasn't in the right state of mind for this, Orochimaru said, looking at Minato as he spoke. Minato thought that Suna wouldn't be happy to learn her mother hadn't come. After all, she had hoped for it, coming all this way. There was one more person, a white-haired man whom Minato didn't recognize. However, the symbol on his chest made it clear he was a representative, likely an elder from Uzushigakure, which made sense given that Konoha and the Uzumakis had fought together. The man felt Minato's gaze, opened his eyes until then closed, and nodded at him. Minato did the same. Kushina hadn't mentioned Uzumakis being in the village, which left him somewhat surprised. With no other choice, they remained in place as the Hokage waited for the crowd to calm down. He then raised his hand again. Today, in addition to celebrating the end of the war and the ceasefire, it is our duty as a village to recognize those who, through their exceptional efforts, made a difference for Konoha. He paused, turning to the ninjas behind him and signaling for them to step forward. All four, including Danzo, joined him, while the other two elders also accompanied them. They advanced as the Hokage instructed everyone to face the crowd. Minato had never before experienced so many people looking at him at once.
Allow me to present Tsukumo Hatake, known as the White Fang of Konoha.
He held the northern border throughout most of the war against the Cloud Village, reclaiming all our lost territories and holding off the most powerful enemy forces on the battlefield. The crowd erupted into applause as Tsukumo offered a slight bow to the crowd, a faint smile gracing his lips. My three students stood out during this war: Orochimaru, Tsunade, and Jiraiya, now known to you as the legendary Sannin, a title they earned through their extraordinary deeds.
Unfortunately, the latter two are not present, but let us begin with Orochimaru's accomplishments.
He withstood Suna's attacks in the region against the Sand Village's ninjas, leading significant offensives and protecting many ninjas in the Land of Rain.
The crowd applauded Orochimaru as he nodded respectfully to them. Jiraiya achieved similar feats, gathering critical intelligence on Iwagakure and their plans.
He protected the northern border in the west and even fought against the Tsuchikage himself.
However, Tsunade stood out the most among them.
She designed a new squad model that changed the course of the war by introducing medical ninjas to teams, drastically reducing the mortality rate. Additionally, she was the most active mind in developing antidotes against the poisons produced by the Sand Village. More applause filled the air as the Hokage continued. We also have our elder and my trusted friend, Danzo, who led the eastern forces and held firm against the Mist Village. He elaborated on several events in which Danzo had excelled. Danzo remained stoic, his eyes closed, as the crowd applauded him. Here we also have the representative of Iwagakure, Uzumaki. They helped us achieve victory in this war, maintaining an alliance that has existed since the time of the first Hokage. We hope this friendship will endure as long as we can. The crowd clapped for the man with a stern expression. Minato, however, felt a wave of nausea at this part, thinking of how Konoha had allowed the Uzumaki clan to be destroyed in the end. To him, the Hokage's words reeked of hypocrisy. Now, let us move to the last of our heroes in this war, Minato Namikaze. With courage, he infiltrated the Leaf Village to rescue someone important, retrieved the antidote, and escaped enemy lines alive. By doing so, he saved not only his companion but also thousands of ninjas, turning the tide of the war and giving Konoha the upper hand for the first time. He also fought bravely on the northern lines, managing to battle the Raikage himself and render him out of action. Furthermore, despite his young age, he assumed command of a camp and achieved the best success rate and lowest mortality rate in missions during the last year of the war. The crowd roared with applause for Minato, their eyes fixed on him. He couldn't help but smile, overwhelmed not just by the cheers of those who knew him, like Kushina, who was shouting alongside Makoto and Suna, both equally boisterous, but also by the sight of Hanabi clapping at a distance, isolated for some reason. He saw the people from the orphanage and other familiar faces among the crowd, but most of all, he was struck by the countless strangers who had never spoken to him yet were cheering and thanking him for his deeds in the war.
He couldn't deny it, it was an incredible feeling. Chapter 206 Celebration. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41. The celebration went on for a while, as everyone cheered for the honorees, who received a special decoration from the village for their services during the war. Meanwhile, the Hokage handed them a scroll as proof of their achievement, along with some rewards. Minato finally managed to leave the main building, departing immediately to meet his companions, who were now gathered with their friends from the academy. The crowd began to disperse as people divided to enjoy the attractions and stalls that merchants had set up in the center and surrounding areas, given the lack of space. You were amazing, Minato.
Kushina commented with an excited smile as she saw him fall in step beside her.
You really were.
Now let's have some fun, Suna added, looking at them while Minato nodded, as the two seemed eager to head to the stalls.
You can go ahead.
I have something to take care of first, Makoto said, and Minato observed her as he nodded. She cast a glance at the crowd, clearly searching for someone. There didn't seem to be a clear reason for her to want to distance herself from them at this moment. And it didn't appear to be related to the Uchiha clan, even though they consistently looked at Makoto with disdain and anger. But it stopped at that. As the others headed to the stalls along with the crowds and their companions, Makoto discreetly moved in another direction. She maneuvered through the crowd, leaping over buildings and houses until she reached a more isolated area. It was a region with many spaced-out houses, some trees, and empty lots. Finally, Makoto reached a person walking alone in an alley. "Why are you following me?" Hanabi asked, stopping in her tracks as she turned to face Makoto, who had landed in front of her. "You didn't even congratulate Minato after the ceremony honoring him as a village hero," Makoto said with a serious expression. This immediately made Hanabi shift her serious look to one of slight embarrassment. Well, I had some issues I needed to deal with, so I didn't want to intrude," she said, while Makoto gave her a look that seemed to say, "Really?" with a hint of sarcasm, as Hanabi avoided her gaze out of shame. "It's your clan, isn't it?" Makoto broke the silence, looking directly at Hanabi. For a brief moment, the two remained silent. "It's complicated," was all Hanabi said, her expression tinged with sadness. "You know, when we were on the northern border, I thought I'd never see you all again. Today, I received a letter from my father saying I'd have to follow the clan's demands. He wanted me to conform to their rules and follow their orders, leaving Team 7 after the war," Makoto remarked. "That's why you went to see him at the Uchiha camp. You stood up to him and even managed to get engaged to Minato," Makoto continued, not sounding envious or upset, merely stating the facts. "That's true," Makoto said. "I stood up to my father, and today I'm expelled from the clan. None of them have told me this directly, but the looks of disdain and anger make it clear that I'm no longer welcome. So, yes, I'm out of my clan, and now my surname will be passed on to someone else," Makoto murmured. "But your clan isn't like mine," Hanabi said in a neutral tone, meeting Makoto's gaze. "You're right, Hanabi. But if you really want to help, you should talk to Minato," Makoto replied. "It's not that simple. You don't understand. We of the branch family are marked, and the mark we bear is impossible to remove. I can't simply decide what I want. I'm bound to this for the rest of my life. This is my fate, and it can never be changed," Hanabi said, her voice laden with sorrow. Makoto's eyes widened, stunned by Hanabi's words. She couldn't say anything as Hanabi simply turned around and continued on her way, leaving Makoto alone in the alley. Makoto watched as Hanabi disappeared into the alley before she finally turned around and headed back to the village center. There, she found her companions, with Minato standing and talking to Shikaku, along with Chozo, who was eating some skewers beside Inoichi, while Tsuna and Kushina were arguing over a cotton candy and chatting with the girls from their old class. Makoto then landed near them, heading toward the girls. As she passed Minato, he glanced at her. "How was she?" he asked. Minato didn't seem surprised. It was clear that he already knew she had gone to talk to Hanabi. "She's not doing well," Makoto replied, her tone tinged with concern as she recalled the girl's expression. It was the look of someone who had lost hope, destined to become a puppet of her clan, bound to that fate. Makoto felt sad seeing it. "I see," Minato murmured, momentarily ignoring Nara. "What are you going to do?" Makoto asked, watching as Minato pressed his lips together. "I don't know yet. I wish she would come to me," Minato admitted. "You didn't wait for me to come to you. Go talk to her, too," Makoto countered. Minato said nothing, only nodding before sighing. "All right, I'll talk to her anyway," he finally responded. "Hey, what are you doing over there, Uchiha? Get over here," Tsuna teased Makoto. She huffed and joined the group, blending in with the girls while they chatted amongst themselves. Meanwhile, the boys continued laughing and talking. Meanwhile, Hanabi returned to the clan. The place was relatively empty, as most of the members were at the festival in the village center. She went to one of the smaller houses designated for branch family members. "You're back, Hanabi." That was quick, her grandfather greeted her.
Hanabi merely nodded and went straight to her room, lying on her Japanese-style bed. She thought about what Makoto had said earlier. Her gaze wandered to the ceiling, illuminated by the daylight. Although everyone was celebrating, and Minato had been recognized as a hero of the village in the war, Hanabi knew she had nothing to celebrate. That's why she preferred to be there, alone, so as not to spoil their celebration with her sadness. Without realizing it, tears began streaming down her face. She quickly wiped them away, trying to forget everything and fall asleep. The festival continued for a while. Minato left the group and went to another spot, stopping gently beside Madame Guerite. "You're here at last, boy," she said, opening a sincere smile. "How are things?" Minato asked, smiling back as he greeted the orphanage director. "We're doing very well. Happy to see that one of my boys has become someone so important to the village. We had no idea what you were already doing for the village when you last came here," she said. Minato hadn't spoken to her since he arrived back in the village, exchanging only a few words with her and other acquaintances. Minato just smiled, but before he could respond, a child tugged at his clothes. "Are you Minato Namikaze? Tell me, what was it like fighting in the war? Did you really face the wreckage alone?" This opened the floodgates, and all the other children began crowding around Minato, pushing against him as he tried to stay balanced. Their eyes sparkled with admiration for the blonde. "Kids, calm down. Let Minato breathe a little. If you want to ask questions, do it one at a time and be polite." Madame Guerite intervened, trying to organize the chaos. Even other people nearby started noticing the situation. Some children who weren't from the orphanage tried to slip away from their parents to join the crowd surrounding Minato, all eager to hear the stories of the young village hero, hoping to gain recognition like him someday. Madame Guerite managed to control the excited children surrounding Minato. In the end, Minato chatted with them, explaining the events of the war in a more child-friendly way, avoiding exaggeration. He also shared valuable advice for the children who were attending the academy. The conversation remained lively until someone shouted nearby, "Minato!" The unmistakable voice of Might Due rang out as he ran toward the group in his peculiar way, followed by his young son, Guy. Both were dressed in green jumpsuits. Minato watched them, raising an eyebrow at the duo. "Look who's here!" Due exclaimed, making Madame Guerite grimace at the sight of these peculiar individuals. "Hi, Minato-sensei!" Guy exclaimed, pointing a finger at him. Minato smiled, looking at the duo. "You truly represent us, Minato. Youth shone through you when you stood beside the Hokage up there," Due proclaimed with so much energy that it startled a few children. "Yes, Dad is right. I can't wait for my time to shine," the boy exclaimed, his eyes blazing with determination. The two seemed completely in sync, both displaying the same energetic and determined spirit as always. After some time, the conversation shifted. Due mentioned that he had spent the last year of the war training to further improve his skills, mastering up to the sixth gate, and that he had been crucial in recent battles at the northern border. "I can't wait to show you everything I've learned and developed on my own, Minato," Due exclaimed, brimming with excitement. "I'll be looking forward to it, Due. How about we meet at Training Field 7 tomorrow?" Minato suggested with a challenging smile. "Of course. I'll prepare myself, and we'll have a battle of youth," Due exclaimed enthusiastically, with his son joining in. After that, the two began walking on their hands, almost running in that position as they left, saying they were going to train for the next day's battle. Minato shrugged. Due and his family were no longer part of the Senju clan, having moved after he returned from the war. They no longer belonged to that place and were deeply grateful for being allowed to leave Guy at the orphanage while Due was away. Due had received a generous reward and was promoted to Jounin at the end of the war, earning enough to afford a larger house with space for their own training. Afterward, Minato returned to Madame Guerite to continue their conversation before bidding farewell. "I promise to visit again in the coming days," Minato said. "The children will be thrilled," she replied as he smiled and handed her a scroll. "No, Minato. You've already helped us so much. We still have leftover funds from your last donation, she murmured, trying to decline the additional money he was offering.
Then pass it on to other orphanages. I'm sure you know who could use these resources, Minato insisted, his smile warm. Garit realized she wouldn't be able to convince him to keep the money and reluctantly accepted it. After that, Minato met up with Kushina, Suna, and Makoto, who were already waiting for him.
The sun was setting. Do you want to stay here, Minato? Suna asked. He shook his head.
No, let's go to my apartment.
I think we can prepare something special there. Makoto bought quite a few things from the market over the past few days. The group nodded and began walking back to Minato's apartment.
There, Minato prepared the meal himself while they enjoyed their time together, reminiscing about the old days, except for Hanabi, who should have been there too.
Kushina and Suna ended up spending the night at the apartment.
The next morning, they decided to head to Training Field 7 to practice a bit. The village was still lively with celebrations in the center, but they chose to focus on honing their skills, as they used to do before the war.
Minato, however, was deep in thought.
He was waiting for Dewey to arrive. It was time to see how his combat style, developed with the armament hockey he had refined over the past year, would measure up. Despite his responsibilities, managing a camp and other duties, he had found time to grow stronger and reach an advanced level. Perhaps Dewey would be a worthy opponent to finally test his power.
Chapter 207 Training. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41.
Minato was focusing his chakra while sitting in a lotus position, training in the middle of the battlefield. Meanwhile, just behind him, Suna and Makoto were locked in combat against each other, one unleashing flames and the other countering with water. The explosion of the two elements shook the entire terrain as they fought fiercely in a rivalry-driven clash, even though Makoto no longer belonged to the Uchiha clan. The battle raged on between the girls as Minato felt something lightly touching his face with a cold metallic sensation.
What are you doing, Kushina?
Minato asked, his eyes still closed, as he felt the tip of an adamantine chain brushing against his face. Kushina had released some of her chains to train as well, thanks to her unique ability, and she thought it might be fun to mess with Minato a little. She smiled as she did so.
Ha 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 ha. It's funny, she laughed.
Minato remained silent as Kushina gave him a mischievous grin and began wrapping more and more chains around his body. I doubt you can get out of this now, she declared with a smile, thinking she had caught Minato, who, in truth, had let her do it in the first place.
Are you sure about that?
Minato calmly opened his eyes, looking at the girl who stared back at him, smiling and waiting for him to prove her wrong. What happened next took her by surprise.
Minato simply disappeared from his spot.
With a surprised gasp, Kushina felt someone grab her thigh, almost making her jump.
But she couldn't even move as Minato held onto her leg.
The chains that had been circling thin air moments before started flailing wildly, with Kushina unable to control them.
Did you forget about the seal on your body?
Minato asked, raising an eyebrow as he was now face to face with the red-haired girl. She looked a little startled before a sly smile formed on her face, catching Minato off guard. Maybe I knew, she said, retracting her chains to her back. Minato barely had time to process her words before Kushina kissed him. Gotcha, she declared before turning into smoke, a shadow clone. Minato stood there, stunned, staring blankly at the scene. She had truly outwitted him this time.
My haki isn't very effective against this kind of thing, Minato thought, scratching his head. Since it posed no danger, even his unique abilities hadn't activated. Ha ha ha. I got you, Minato. Kushina celebrated, appearing in the distance, laughing. What was that?
Did you just kiss him?
Suna stopped fighting and looked stunned at the sight.
Yes, it was awesome, Databane.
Kushina exclaimed.
Minato noticed the three pairs of eyes staring at him, while Kushina was the only one having fun with the situation.
Just a kiss. Minato and I have done bolder things, Makoto said, approaching with a neutral tone. This made Suna's eyes widen, and Kushina immediately stopped laughing.
Bolder things? Both Tsuna and Kushina shouted, completely flustered by what they had just heard, looking indignant.
Explain exactly what you did, now. Databane. Kushina ran toward Minato, who leapt into the air using Jeppo, wondering how he had ended up in such a mess. Tisk, Minato used to take me to the beach every week.
We'd stay in the water together, alone, even in the middle of the war, Tsuna said, crossing her arms and closing her eyes. She seemed embarrassed, with a blush on her face, speaking more nervously than usual, as though ashamed to admit it.
Of course, nothing actually happened between her and Minato.
Despite being flustered, she was the most timid among them, and whenever Minato teased her, she would immediately go on the defensive out of embarrassment. Hearing this, both Makoto and Kushina widened their eyes and turned back to Minato with indignation.
What did you do with this Uchiha? What did you do with this Senju? Am I the only one who just kissed him? Minato was somewhat lost, still wondering how things could have escalated to this point.
He hovered in the air to avoid descending to where three angry girls were shouting at him, with Kushina looking the most downcast among them.
Can you all calm down? Stop lying to each other. Don't think anything more happened, Minato said as he cautiously landed some distance away from the three. Man.
The village is still celebrating, and here we are, watching a teenage romance, some Umbu commented as they observed the interaction from afar. They were unable to hear the conversation clearly due to maintaining their usual protective distance around Kushina. That girl's an Uchiha, but she's living with the Leaf's hero.
I can't believe the Uchiha clan would let one of their members marry someone outside. Maybe being a hero has its perks, another added.
While Minato was stuck listening to the indignation of the three girls as they provoked each other, someone arrived to save the blonde's skin.
Minato.
The shout immediately drew Minato's attention to the side, where he saw a green-clad figure running toward him, seemingly with some difficulty. As the person approached, Minato leaped over the girls, who turned to look at the man yelling his name. It was none other than Due, who landed on the ground with a loud halt.
I'm here, as promised. Due shouted enthusiastically. And so am I. A second voice rang out as a smaller version of Due ran toward them with equal excitement. The great guy is here too, he declared, pointing proudly at himself.
I see you finally made it, but why are you carrying so much weight?
Minato asked, noticing the heavy loads they bore as they ran up. It was clear they were pushing their limits.
This is just a warm-up for the great match we'll have here.
Due said enthusiastically, to which Minato nodded. Well, if that's the case, then I can understand, Minato replied thoughtfully.
He had to admit that these two were incredibly persistent in their training, unusual, but admirable.
Before anything else, Minato began, turning to the young guy, how's the academy going for you, kid? I haven't had the chance to ask.
Guy seemed surprised by the question before flashing a broad smile and giving a thumbs up.
It's going great.
I may not be able to use jutsu like the others, but I'm definitely the best at taijutsu in the academy since my rival already graduated, he exclaimed proudly.
Let me ask you something. Is there an Uchiha named Obito in your class?
Minato inquired curiously, causing Makoto behind him to raise an eyebrow. She was surprised that Minato was interested in an Uchiha she had never heard of.
Obito?
Of course. I'm stronger than him, Guy replied confidently, but quickly added, but I also acknowledge his effort.
I think his fighting spirit shines brightly, like the flame of youth. Minato nodded at his response.
He was curious about Obito and Rin, both likely to be part of his future team. However, he knew this topic could wait for another time. Well, anyway, let's get straight to it, Minato said, turning back to Due, who had a determined gleam in his eye.
Due nodded in agreement. Of course, Minato. I'm ready for the challenge. Due exclaimed.
Minato then shifted his attention to the three girls.
Could you clear the field for the two of us?
It's time for me to test a few things, he requested.
None of them protested.
Even Guy started to step back.
Good luck, you two.
They called out as they retreated.
Minato looked at Due and instructed, "Remove all your weights, whether they're seals or physical." Due nodded and began removing the weights.
The impact was so intense that the ground cracked around where he dropped them, despite it being so close to the ground. He then stretched, preparing himself, while Minato stretched his own muscles after stepping a few meters away.
"That guy seems to make Minato get serious," Suna murmured, watching the scene with interest. "Is your dad really strong?" Kushina asked the young guy, who was also nearby.
"Of course he is. Dad got really strong and always said it was thanks to Mr. Minato's help," the boy exclaimed with his usual energy. "When we were on the northern border,"
Makoto began, stepping in to explain.
She was the only one with a clearer idea of the older man's strength. Minato always had great hopes for him. Might Due seemed like a weak ninja at first, and he even lived up to his reputation. He was a man almost 30 years old, still a genin.
But as the months went by, he kept getting stronger, and Hanabi and I realized Minato's confidence in him wasn't unfounded. Minato had trained Due in a technique completely unlike anything she had ever seen before.
After leaving the northern border, Minato had remarked that Due would one day fully master that technique, while he himself continued training to perfect his own special abilities. This fight will be between two types of abilities that have faced each other before, but neither was as refined as they are now.
It'll be interesting to see them fight at full strength on another level," Makoto said, a small smile forming on her lips.
The girls watched in silence as the final preparations of the two warriors began. "Hey, isn't that the man known as the Eternal Genin?" one of the Ambu at a distance commented upon seeing Due. After all, he had worn that green jumpsuit his entire life, making him impossible to mistake.
"Exactly, but I heard he became a jounin. Can you believe it?"
"They say he's been standing out for about 2 years now, on the northern border," another replied.
"Not only that, you're behind the times.
I heard that Minato Namikaze himself trained him and helped him develop an original technique known as the 8 Gates. They say he can unlock his chakra and explosively increase his physical strength. Maybe we'll get to see what kind of technique that is here. After all, he went from Eternal Genin to Jounin." A third Ambu added, while all of them seemed deeply interested in what was about to unfold.
"I'm ready, Minato,"
Due shouted, striking a fighting pose, adjusting his jumpsuit, and putting his arms forward in a kung fu stance. His legs stirred the ground with energy.
"All right, let's begin," Minato replied, assuming his combat stance with both fists forward.
"This will be the ultimate fight to test my level of hockey against the ninja world," Minato thought, excitement growing within him. The two stared at each other for a moment.
Dewey's playful expression had vanished, as had Minato's soft and calm demeanor.
Now, they faced each other as true warriors. Suddenly, Minato and Due kicked off the ground, causing it to explode as they dashed forward at high speed. They used only their raw physical strength, unburdened by any weights. "So fast," was the collective exclamation, both from those watching nearby and from the distant Ambu. Everyone was astonished at the speed of the two as they met in the middle of the battlefield, exchanging their first blows. Chapter 208 Armament Hockey vs. the 6 Gates 01.
Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41.
The impact of the two strikes quickly resounded across the battlefield, as all the spectators watched Minato and Due collide their forearms against each other. Minato couldn't help but smile at this, and Due seemed excited as well. In the next moment, both disappeared, reappearing a few meters ahead before clashing again, only to vanish and reappear in another area. Due and Minato exchanged kicks and punches at incredible speed. Soon, the battlefield turned into a spectacle of two blurs moving so fast that everyone was astonished.
Kushina and Suna tried to follow their movements with their sensory abilities, while Makoto activated her Sharingan.
Next to them, Guy watched in awe, his mouth slightly agape, as he observed his father and Lord Minato fighting at speeds invisible to the naked eye. This went on for a while, as they advanced and collided repeatedly. Even the Ambu began paying closer attention.
"This is high-level taijutsu we're witnessing here," some of them murmured, impressed, as they had never seen a fight like this before.
"Due!"
Minato called, blocking a kick from the man.
From now on, I'm going to use the 6 styles, advanced techniques that don't rely on chakra.
You'd better be ready, Minato declared, and Dewey's expression turned serious.
In the next moment, Minato disappeared using Saru, moving so fast it looked like teleportation.
Dewey stopped running, analyzing the area around him as Minato vanished. Kushina and Suna looked upwards, spotting Minato hovering above the battlefield.
So, this is the flight technique we've heard about? He's somehow kicking the ground, the Umbu murmured, curious as they saw Minato seemingly standing still in midair. Dewey finally spotted him above, and in the next instant, Minato pointed 2 fingers downward in a gun-like gesture.
Dewey quickly realized what he was doing.
With his next move, Minato began using Shurgan, unleashing a rapid sequence of vacuum projectiles like bullets that raced forward, exploding on impact with the ground. Each shot carved a line of destruction, forcing Dewey to dodge continuously.
Damn it, Minato, you're going to make me use this, Dewey muttered as he evaded the vacuum attacks. Gaining some distance, his body suddenly began to glow with a blue and slightly green aura as he opened the 4th gate.
A surge of energy quickly engulfed the area, and the intensity and speed of Dewey's chakra flow increased even further. He moved so fast now that Minato could barely predict his movements. Adjusting his pace, Minato started firing Shurgan even ahead of where Dewey would appear, using his observation haki. But the man was now too fast. Even as Minato devastated the battlefield, scattering debris everywhere, Dewey seemed untouched.
Everything stopped suddenly.
Dewey smiled before bursting out from the smoke, rushing toward Minato in the air.
The latter disappeared just as Dewey struck, narrowly missing his target.
Minato repositioned himself by kicking off the ground and counterattacked. Dewey took the hit, surprised, and was sent flying back to the ground.
Minato immediately followed, closing the distance with Saru.
Minato vanished amid the chaos, charging at high speed toward Dewey, who was already on the ground, preparing for the incoming attack. A massive dust cloud was kicked up as they collided, drawing the attention of every spectator in the area. At the center of the scene, Minato and Dewey were locked in a flurry of devastating blows. Both were pushing their limits, trying to overpower one another, but Dewey was beginning to gain the upper hand against Minato, who relied solely on the 6 styles and pure taijutsu.
Eventually, Minato had to retreat as Dewey pressed forward with relentless punches and kicks. Minato skillfully evaded, using Saru and Jeppo to control his movements in midair. The battlefield descended into chaos once more.
Dewey's attacks were explosively powerful, cracking the ground and sending large chunks of debris flying in all directions.
Minato is retreating, Kushina murmured, stunned by what she was witnessing.
Yes, but he's holding back.
This is just a taijutsu battle, Suna commented. Even though Dewey's specialty is taijutsu, Minato's isn't.
According to her, Minato was even more powerful when using jutsus.
No.
He's not using his full taijutsu, and even so, not a single strike has managed to hit him, Makoto said, her eyes moving rapidly across the battlefield, tracking every movement with precision. At first glance, Minato seemed to be at a disadvantage. But he was using his skills from the 6 styles, combined with observation haki, predicting every attack.
Even as Dewey unleashed dozens of punches, Minato evaded them all effortlessly. Minato pulled back with Saru, but Dewey immediately pursued him.
However, the older man was surprised to see Minato pointing his fingers at him again, unleashing another barrage of air projectiles.
Dewey disappeared in an instant, dodging as the ground was completely obliterated by Minato's attacks.
Taking advantage of the situation, Minato gained altitude, running into the air as he prepared to launch another attack against Dewey. Meanwhile, Dewey was sprinting across the battlefield, waiting for the right moment to leap toward Minato again. But Minato wouldn't let that happen so easily. He swung his foot backward before delivering a powerful kick in midair. In the next moment, a blue arc of light shot from his kick, heading straight toward Dewey.
What is that?
Everyone murmured, astonished at the aerial slash they were witnessing. It was a technique Minato had developed over the past year, further refining the 6 styles, the Rankyaku. Dewey had to dodge quickly as the slash struck the ground, creating a massive impact.
He reappeared to the side, but Minato wasn't done.
He began delivering a series of kicks in the air, generating more slashes that spread in all directions, turning the battlefield into utter chaos. The impacts were so powerful they could rival C-rank jutsus.
But the advantage was that Minato could unleash these attacks repeatedly, forcing Dewey to retreat.
Even with his incredible speed, Dewey was eventually hit and sent flying backward. Minato landed in the midst of the destruction, looking at Dewey with a challenging smile.
"Interesting, Dewey," he said, calling out to him. "I want you to hit me with everything you've got."
Dewey narrowed his eyes, serious.
Minato stood still, not moving, openly challenging him. "He wants to take the attack head-on?" Kushina murmured, worried. Dewey didn't hesitate, as Minato had asked for it. He began generating even more energy, pushing the fourth gate to its limit. Just as Minato had requested, he flexed his feet, slammed them against the ground with immense force, breaking it, and vanished in an explosion of speed as everyone watched, tense. Makoto remained silent. "Minato's crazy!" Suna exclaimed. But it was already too late. In the next instant, Dewey's fist collided with Minato's chest. The latter had activated Tekai, his body-hardening technique, which seemed to glow faintly as it absorbed the impact. As Dewey's fist struck Minato's chest, a metallic sound echoed across the battlefield. Dewey was taken aback, feeling as if he had hit an iron wall. At the same moment, a massive explosion swept through the area, causing even more destruction to the already ravaged battlefield. "Is this taijutsu? I've never seen anything like it," one of the Umbu murmured, amazed by both fighters. "Well, Dewey, that was a solid punch," Minato said calmly amid the chaos, as Dewey stepped back, shocked to see Minato perfectly unharmed. Minato had used Tekai to withstand the blow. He struggled to prevent his body from yielding to the impact and had nearly been forced to transform into light using his Logia ability, but he managed to endure. These were the advanced forms of the 6 styles, which he had been training for years. "Dewey, let's take this to the next level. What do you say?" "I want to see your strength with your vital gates at full power," Minato challenged. Dewey nodded before disappearing, reappearing several meters away. Crossing his arms, he began to intensify the energy around him even further. The aura grew increasingly powerful and vibrant, its color shifting until it shone a radiant green. "Sixth gate, release!" Dewey shouted. In the next moment, a storm of green energy enveloped him, creating a chaotic explosion around his body. "What is that?" Everyone on the battlefield was stunned to witness the technique. "So, this is the power of the inner gates," one of the Umbu murmured, impressed, trying to grasp the magnitude of the energy. Dewey continued working to stabilize the energy, which gradually became less chaotic, though it still glowed intensely around him. "Incredible, Dewey. You've really mastered this," Minato said, admiration evident on his face. "Incredible, Dad. Amazing," Guy shouted, jumping with excitement in a corner, his eyes sparkling with awe as he witnessed his father's power in action for the first time. This was the moment Dewey showcased how far he had come. "Could Dad be stronger than Lord Minato?" young Guy murmured, glancing at Minato, who stood motionless amid the destruction, seemingly calm. "Don't count your victories yet, boy," Makoto commented to young Guy. "Minato hasn't even started using his full strength." Minato closed his eyes for a moment, concentrating. When he opened them, he raised his fist and clenched it slowly. His arm began to darken, as though it were being coated in a dense shadow. It was Busashoku Haki, manifesting at his current level. Now, Minato and Dewey stared each other down seriously, as they had at the start of the fight, but this time with their full physical power on display. Everyone around them watched silently, waiting for the next move. On one side, Dewey radiated a green aura of pure chakra, while on the other, Minato remained calm, with only one arm covered in haki, pitch black like the night. Without warning, both kicked the ground with immense force. This time, their speed was on a whole new level. Minato shot forward with sorrow, while Dewey charged with all the speed the sixth gate could provide. The two collided in the middle of the battlefield. Unlike before,
The impact wasn't just explosive, it was as if an A-rank jutsu had been unleashed in the center of the field. A colossal explosion swept through the area, generating shockwaves that toppled nearby rocks and trees. In the next instant, before anyone could see the result, the clash culminated in an even greater explosion, completely obscuring the view of what was happening at the epicenter of the confrontation.
Chapter 209 Armament Hockey vs. the Six Gates 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41.
Everything seemed ordinary that day for the rest of Konoha until an explosion suddenly echoed in the distance, loud enough to be heard throughout the village. Those with sharper hearing immediately caught its echo and pinpointed its location, while most people, civilians, heard it as it traveled across the Konoha sky. It was another day of celebration, with shops full of people walking through the village, buying things here and there, while families gathered, chatting, and enjoying themselves. At a site previously used to honor the heroes of the Leaf, Hiruzen stood observing the movement of the village, which was still celebrating the end of the war conflicts. But the explosion made Hiruzen quickly turn his gaze toward the area where the training fields were located, his narrowed eyes showing concern and curiosity. After all, such an explosion had to be of an A-rank level. Even many shinobi walking through the streets, as well as common citizens, suddenly stopped and turned their curious gazes toward the source, intrigued by the sound, some looking in that direction while others remained uncertain about its origin. "This sound, is someone fighting in the village?" a ninja asked from the rooftops. "What's happening over there?" someone questioned from the streets, worried.
"Did you come from there?"
Hiruzen asked while keeping his gaze fixed on the area where Camp 7 should be.
He spoke after sensing a presence entering his office.
"Yes." It took a second before a voice answered, as an umbu landed kneeling behind him.
"There is a battle happening between Minato Namikaze and Might Due. A taijutsu battle, from what it seems," he reported. "Minato and Due?"
Hiruzen repeated, turning his gaze toward the one who had spoken. His eyes widened upon hearing the second name.
"Wait, are you saying that explosion was caused by just taijutsu?"
The Hokage couldn't hide his surprise. After all, the impact was far too great for mere taijutsu. Wasting no time asking further questions, he opened his window and quickly leaped out, using his full speed. His body moved like a blur, followed by more than 20 umbu trailing behind him. They swiftly crossed the entire village, reaching an area with fewer houses until there were none at all, arriving at the training fields.
The explosive sounds grew louder as they got closer, accompanied by many other ninjas also approaching out of curiosity.
The Hokage passed through the trees while chaos engulfed the entire area, destruction everywhere as the shinobi already present kept their distance. Ignoring everyone else, the Hokage narrowed his eyes and focused on the center of the battlefield, where black lightning surrounded by a red aura and pure blue chakra clashed, trying to overpower each other.
"What is that?"
Hiruzen asked himself in shock as he tried to identify the techniques, both from Due and Minato, since he recognized neither. Then they finally appeared amidst the chaos. Minato stood on one side, his blackened hand clashing against Due's fist, which erupted in green energy. "Incredible, this is pure taijutsu, but what techniques are these?" The umbu beside the Hokage couldn't help but comment, visibly stunned.
More ninjas arrived at the scene, observing and analyzing the battle as the energies shattered the terrain.
"What is that?" a Hyuga clan member murmured, staring at the two with the Byakugan activated. "I've never seen chakra behave like this," another companion said beside him, equally shocked. "It's not just chakra," the Hyuga murmured, his expression dazed. "I can see green chakra in a way I've never seen anyone use before, but those black lightning bolts, what is that?"
"What am I witnessing?" The Hyuga couldn't believe his own eyes.
"What do you mean?" his colleague asked.
That is not chakra,"
he whispered so softly that his friend barely heard, his voice filled with astonishment.
The fight continued intensely as they had already spent minutes trying to overpower each other.
The girls, along with Kushina, grabbed Guy by the arms and moved away from the area, as the previously untouched battlefield was being destroyed.
"Incredible,"
Suna murmured, retreating with them as they approached the other ninjas, who were quickly filling the area, also curious about the explosion.
Suna couldn't hide her surprise at the immense power both fighters were emanating.
That strength surpassed even the most powerful force she had ever witnessed from her mother. Not that she had seen everything Tsunade could do, but Suna couldn't help but notice that they had even surpassed her superior strength. Something she took pride in, as she aspired to surpass her mother in the future.
Now Minato, he's even stronger than me, she murmured internally.
The clash between the two continued for a while longer, seemingly reaching its peak. As another explosion erupted across the battlefield, two figures were sent flying in opposite directions, Due and Minato soaring through the air after their blows reached their limit, each radiating their own unique energy. Under the watchful eyes of the gathered crowd, the two landed on the ground with such force that it cracked beneath their feet. The moment they made contact with the earth, they disappeared, launching forward at a speed that made them vanish from most people's sight.
What speed?
Hiruzen was already astonished by their strength, but their sheer velocity was so overwhelming that even he would have trouble keeping up. The next moment, another explosion erupted as they clashed again. The battlefield trembled under their relentless attacks as they dashed toward each other once more, dashing across the terrain.
All the shinobi present watched as the entire area was devastated by their battle.
Explosions erupted in multiple locations simultaneously, as green chakra energy and black lightning clashed. The battlefield had turned into utter chaos in all directions. Both fighters moved at high speeds, surpassing the open field, while the nearby river exploded entirely, carving deep into the ground.
Their movements extended into the forest, quickly making it clear to everyone that staying there was no longer safe. "We need to back away," some ninjas exclaimed, watching as trees were obliterated. Their speed was so overwhelming that even most jonin present couldn't react in time. "Keep your distance as well,"
Hiruzen commanded as he directed his Umbu to retreat.
"Incredible. Father and Lord Minato, they're so strong." Guy couldn't help but exclaim in excitement. "We have to get out of here," Makoto warned, trying to keep up with their movements using her Sharingan, as they quickly retreated.
Just before the tree they were standing on trembled and exploded. All the ninjas withdrew as more and more people arrived at the scene, drawn by the reverberating echoes of the explosions throughout the village. "Is that really Might Due, the eternal genin, fighting in a battle like this against the hero Minato Namikaze?" some jonin asked, recognizing Due.
"By my Rikudu,
they're destroying the entire area,"
another murmured.
"This is the 8 gates technique that Minato was sent to the northern border to help Might Due develop, so this is the result. It's incredible." Hiruzen couldn't help but comment, his gaze filled with both interest and surprise. It was truly more powerful than he had imagined. After all, he had never witnessed it himself. According to reports, Minato had left Due's training after mastering the 4th gate, continuing to train alone once Minato had returned to the western border. But what stage of the technique is this? If it's fully developed, it will be a monster in taijutsu, one that has never existed before. Hiruzen couldn't help but be fascinated by such abilities. Furthermore, he barely knew anything about the technique. The reports only described the progress, not the actual skill. He had hoped to speak with Due about it, but that had not been possible yet. However, another question lingered in his mind. What was this ability that Minato was using? Unlike Due, he didn't display any chakra bursts or bodily explosions. Instead, his arms simply turned black with some unknown technique, and he advanced using only the raw capabilities of his own body. "He is slower than Due." A new voice emerged from the side as Hiruzen turned to see Hatake Tsukumo arriving to witness the battle, landing beside the Hokage, with Kakashi accompanying him. While Tsukumo narrowed his eyes, trying to follow the fight, Kakashi widened his own, seeing only explosions, unable to keep up with the two fighters moving at incredible speed. "Yes," Hiruzen murmured as he observed Minato and Due rushing toward each other again, both preparing their next strikes, Minato readying a punch with his blackened arm, while Due launched a kick, his body continuously emanating green chakra. "But he is predicting all of Due's movements," he added, watching with interest. "He has always had this ability. He even managed to defeat Uchiha classmates who had their Sharingan activated back at the academy," Tsukumo commented, and the Hokage nodded. Minato had always possessed an unusual predictive ability. It was similar to the Uchiha Sharingan, but at the same time, it did not rely on visual perception and seemed to function in a full 360-degree awareness. The Hokage and others had long assumed that Minato was some kind of sensory ninja, though an exceptional one. Yet, they had never truly uncovered the nature of his abilities, leading to lingering questions about what they truly were. His sensory skills, now his blackened fists, his ability to leap midair, his speed so great it almost looks like teleportation. What kind of techniques are these? This was the question on everyone's mind as they watched Minato and his unique abilities in action. It's incredible, he isn't using any jutsu to fight Due. Hiruzen murmured, his interest piqued as he observed these two-leaf shinobi shining in front of everyone. Amidst the chaos, Minato anticipated one of Due's attacks, appearing above him, dodging, and using his arm to block another kick. He is faster than me, Minato acknowledged to himself mid-battle. Yet, he did not see this as a disadvantage, on the contrary, he was excited. Since he could only use haki on his arms due to its current limitations, his observation haki was essential for dodging, allowing him to anticipate attacks and react in time. Due showed no emotion as he relentlessly pursued Minato. His body was becoming slightly harder to control, and although he had anticipated that Minato would be able to fight against him, he couldn't help but feel surprised. Minato was using the very abilities he had been developing during over a year of training against his current strength. He wanted to shout in excitement at this youthful demonstration between the two of them, but he could barely think about anything other than the fight. Neither of them had any control over where the battle was going anymore. They had left the open battlefield, continuing into the forest, destroying trees, and even carving through the river itself. I want to prove to the world that I am a powerful taijutsu ninja, Due exclaimed internally. I want to surpass my limits, I want to reach a new level of strength. Minato also roared in his mind, letting himself be carried by the battle. Here, in this moment, he could break past his current strength with both of his haki abilities. This was what he had wanted all along, helping Due develop the 8 gates. And now, finally, he was training against someone who could push him to evolve. Chapter 210, The Strength of the Eternal Genin. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41. The fight continued for a while longer, with the terrain continuing to be destroyed, while finally, both seemed to start slowing down after maintaining the same constant level of power up to this moment. Every day back, they didn't know how many times they had to return, even more so after the fight reached them anyway. In the middle of the destroyed field, small explosions continued until they finally began to cease. On one side, Due was still releasing his greenish chakra, but with a much weaker flow. He was injured and panting, while Minato also appeared wounded. His arms were beginning to fail, returning to the natural color of his skin, as he too struggled to breathe. So, this is my limit, Minato murmured, still looking around, seeing all the destruction they had caused while feeling all the people distanced from them. They were at the starting point of the fight. Yeah. It seems we limited ourselves to this, Minato. Due's voice was hoarse, struggling. All eyes remained on them in silent observation from a distance. At the same time, both fell to their knees on the ground. Minato was at his limit, completely drained. Even he had suffered from expressing his haki to this extent in a fight. Due was beginning to lose his transformation entirely, returning to normal. His shirt had already been torn apart, and the muscles released by the 6th gate began to shrink, returning to the athletic appearance he normally had, losing all the chakra-inflated muscles. However, at the same time, he looked significantly older than usual. His skin was pale, and he was visibly exhausted. He barely managed to say, as if there was a long road ahead for him to recover after using the 6th gate. There's still so much for me to learn. That was Minato's thought as he looked at his arm, still feeling a slight numbness from the haki's energy. He hadn't even known he could use his fruit in that state, nor could he attempt anything with the hundreds of eyes fixed on them at that moment. It was at this moment that people landed nearby, in the midst of all the destruction they had caused. The Hokage himself, along with several Umbu and even Tsukumo, approached with curiosity. That was quite the spectacle.
The Hokage broke the silence with these words, looking at the two with interest. Hokage-sama.
Due murmured, barely able to speak, before he began to faint, collapsing onto the ground.
Minato remained silent.
He was extremely exhausted as well, but he managed to maintain his consciousness with some effort.
Help them. The Hokage ordered as two of the Yambu, one of them a medical ninja, stepped forward. I'll take care of him. Someone came running as Tsuna approached, stopping anyone else from getting closer.
She quickly reached Minato and examined him with a sharp gaze.
How are you?
Without waiting for an answer, she simply moved behind him, placing both palms on his back and beginning to release medical ninjutsu.
Tired. Minato murmured, to which she nodded.
Then just rest, I'll take care of you, she said, beginning to heal his wounds and even some fractured bones from the intense battle, or he had to strike purely with haki.
After all, he couldn't even transform his body into light while activating haki. Minato.
Kushina, Makoto, and a young guy ran toward them moments later, with the last one heading straight for his father.
Dad. Are you okay? Is he going to be okay? Guy looked a bit terrified. Trust the medical ninjas.
A hand touched his head, and he looked up to see the Hokage himself, smiling down at him. Your father displayed great power for all of us today, and he'll be fine soon. You should be proud. Due heard this, and emotion flickered in his eyes, appearing deeply moved by the words from the Hokage of the village.
Yes. He showed the power of youth, he said, wiping away a few tears. Minato, let me help you too. Kushina started examining Minato from every angle, eager to use her healing jutsu as well. Let me do it, Kushina, I'm already handling it.
Tsuna grumbled, making the redhead step back and let her do her work. Meanwhile, Makoto stood there, arms crossed, looking at all the destruction caused by their fight.
What power! And this was done with just a taijutsu battle?
Makoto murmured, feeling a tinge of jealousy as she looked at Minato, wondering how far he would go in terms of power and if she could ever reach his level. She questioned whether she could truly keep up with him. After all, those who wanted to stand by Minato's side had to be extremely powerful, regardless of the enemy. Meanwhile, Kushina and Tsuna had started arguing, but Minato was too exhausted to even complain about the shouting happening right next to his ears. Minato felt relieved as he began to recover slightly with Tsuna's help. His exhaustion lessened a little. Even though she couldn't completely restore his stamina, she at least alleviated some of it, allowing him to breathe easier and speak more calmly.
At that exact moment, Tsukumo approached, staring at the boy after analyzing the battlefield as well. Certainly, that was quite the spectacle,
he commented, crossing his arms.
The boy nodded without saying anything.
This was the result of the training you did at the border. I'm sure the Hokage is very pleased, as he himself said. Tsukumo spoke, before shifting his gaze from Minato to Hiruzen, who nodded in agreement, confirming his words.
Indeed, the village is full of powerful talents. Perhaps we are entering a new golden era, whether in this generation or the ones to come.
His eyes scanned Tsukumo, Minato, the three girls surrounding him, Might Due, and even stopped at Guy. Despite his sometimes questionable actions, he truly valued a strong and powerful village, and his expression showed it.
Minato asked Tsuna to stop now that his condition no longer prevented him from standing. He calmly got up.
His eyes turned to Due, who was still being treated by the medical ninjas.
Due's body had suffered much more damage than his own.
Even though Due had a slight advantage in their taijutsu battle, Minato knew that in a real fight, he could have used other abilities that he had limited himself from using in this battle. His chakra reserves were still full, but the experience of the fight had been incredible for him. He felt that his haki had evolved more than in any other training he had done so far. He hoped to continue having these matches with Due frequently, further consolidating his power and refining his mastery of haki until he reached a truly overwhelming level.
You did it without caring about anyone else watching. Minato suddenly spoke as he stood up, observing the unconscious Due.
You proved that a ninja can achieve greatness without using a single jutsu. You forged your strength in your own way, making your path different from everyone else's, and you proved it.
Always be proud of that, Might Due.
He spoke to himself, but everyone around heard his words, feeling different emotions and thoughts as they listened. However, no one could disagree with him. His eyes returned to the man known as the Eternal Genin. Certainly, this demonstration would silence all those who believed he could never become a Jounin, at least until today. At that moment, Kakashi appeared, approaching his father. Before he could say anything, an excited voice echoed.
Kakashi! My eternal rival! Let's fight!
Guy exclaimed, pointing at him with enthusiasm. Kakashi simply frowned, unable to believe he was being challenged in a place like this, right after such an intense battle. He let out a deep sigh, not knowing how to react. Tsukumo, on the other hand, merely laughed at the situation, while Minato sighed and turned toward the Hokage.
I'll be heading home. Can you take care of Due? He asked.
Hiruzen nodded with a slight smile.
Go rest, Namikaze Minato.
You demonstrated exceptional power today, and the whole village expected nothing less from its hero. Minato simply nodded before grabbing the three girls beside him and disappearing in the blink of an eye, using his jutsu. Meanwhile, the medical ninjas began tending to Due, and the Hokage worked to calm the situation. Some shinobi were called in to start repairing the damage done to the training field, though nothing could be done about the fallen trees. Far from there, a man watched the scene with keen interest. Leaning on a cane, his single visible eye narrowed as he evaluated the destruction.
Danza-sama, Namikaze Minato has just retreated to his home. A masked ANBU ninja reported, kneeling beside him. I saw. Danza responded, his voice cold and calculating. He observed for a few more seconds before turning his back. Let's go. There is nothing more to see here. With those words, he disappeared into the forest, followed by several ANBU operatives. The battle quickly became the talk of the village. The shinobi who had witnessed it spread the story like wildfire. Everyone was discussing the taijutsu fight on a scale never seen before. The most astonishing part was that Might Due, the Eternal Genin, had managed to fight Namikaze Minato, the war hero, on equal footing. Speculations about the techniques used also began to surface. No one knew exactly what technique Minato had used. There were rumors that his fists had turned black. Could it have been concentrated chakra? And Might Due? He had used the 8 gates, a technique he had developed himself, with Minato merely offering some initial guidance before Due fully perfected it. Regardless, it had been a legendary battle. The Eternal Genin facing the hero of the village. Facing the very man who had even defeated the third Raikage. Conversations spread throughout the village, and more people were astonished by the magnitude of the fight. At the Hyuga mansion. That night, Hanabi was having dinner with her grandfather. She barely touched her food, nearly stirring it around on her plate with her chopsticks, lost in thought. Her expression was calm, but there was a certain melancholy in her gaze. Her grandfather observed her for a while before finally speaking. You know. I heard about your friend, Namikaze Minato. At the mention of that name, Hanabi lifted her eyes, a bit surprised. They say he was involved in a battle that shook the entire village, using only taijutsu against another great shinobi. She remained silent. Some of our shinobi were there and saw everything. They completely destroyed training field number 7. Wasn't that the field your team used to train at? He asked. Hanabi looked at him for a moment, surprised, and nodded slightly to her grandfather, but soon her expression faded. Her gaze became distant, and her voice came out low, almost a whisper. Yes. It's true. Minato has always been impressive. She turned her eyes back to her plate, showing little interest in her food. Her expression now carried a hint of sadness. Her grandfather sighed, silently watching his granddaughter, who now spent most of her time alone in her room. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned.
Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.